Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony.
And I'm Ryan.
All right. So, Ichimon means one question in Japanese. And every episode on the show, we ask a question about Japan. Today's question is. There we go. That worked. That's not the question.
The question was, will this work?
Yeah, the question was, will this work? It worked.
And it did. So see you next time.
All right. So the question is. There we go. Okay, so the question is, which is better, jet or university teaching? Okay, so
if the question is which is better, the answer is very easy.
Well, okay. Maybe some people already know what the answer will be, but you know, we gotta explain a little bit for the people that
I'll go into details, but university, the pay is much higher.
yes. Okay, so I think most people are aware of that, but you know, we want to give a little bit of background context. So many people that go to Japan end up working at, you can even give us like the three, like what's better, Eikaiwa, jet, or you can do the whole ranking, and university, you've done all three. So anyway, back to what I was.
Katekyoshi.
Oh, you've even done Kate. Oh, wonderful. So you can give us the whole perspective, right? But I've only done jet. But let me context. So most people, when they go to Japan, they end up teaching English at first. That's how they get the visa. And the two most common ways tend to be Eikaiwa, which is like private language schools, and jet program, or some other similar program where you go teach at public schools. You are an assistant language teacher. But then there's other options. Sometimes you can just get hired from the beginning as a university teacher, but the most common course is you end up going on jet or like the English language schools, and then eventually you make that transition to university. And then of course you can leave the whole English sphere of teaching and all that, but we're not going to do that today, because Ryan has experience in all of these, and currently he's teaching at a university, but he was doing jet for a long time. And so I want to kind of compare and contrast, like, you know, get Ryan's thoughts on this for anybody that's thinking about what they're doing, maybe even what they're doing post-jet, or, you know, they're trying to transition to something else, and hopefully this will be of some use to them. So can you give us a little bit of context for your career trajectory, Ryan, to let people know, like, you know, what you've done and, you know, where you've been?
So when I first came to Japan back in 2008.
Whoa.
I know, isn't that like... Okay, this has actually happened to me a couple times recently. My wife watches videos of like foreigners exploring Japan.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like, oh, I've been in Japan a long time now, almost 8 years. And I'm like, oh man, I must be like ancient in Japanese time. I'm way over that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I came and I got a job at Eikaiwa Geos, who has since gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I was there when that happened. But I think the teaching is very similar with the other ones. I enjoyed it a lot. It has a bad reputation. The companies, there are some sketchy ones, and sometimes the terms and conditions are bad, at least compared to other jobs. But I think the actual work is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've just met people here on jet like look down on the Eikaiwa people, and I feel like, why? They're just doing the same job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, getting sidetracked.
No, but I think one of the main complaints is like the pressure that you have to like sell, right?
That is an issue. Yeah, they didn't want me to like sell books and sell like expanded classes and private lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one I worked at, the pay was actually fairly good at the time, but I think that's part of the reason they went out of business. I have some friends who work at them now, and they say the pay is like terrible.
Yeah.
And I've heard it's often hard to even get like a full-time contract. They want to give you like part-time stuff, just to like give you less benefits, less pay. So if you can get a good contract with like survivable pay, the work itself, I think, is pretty fun. Over like the being pressured to sell things to customers can be annoying, but I mean, honestly, I just kind of ignored it. I would recommend stuff if I thought it was actually helpful, because sometimes you have someone who's like, oh, I want to improve my listening, and we have like listening, like, it's not exactly a book. We had this like big case of CDs that had a whole bunch of like listening that matched their textbook. And if they specifically told me they wanted to improve their listening, I would just be like, well, this does exist if you're interested, but like don't feel any pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the plus there I think is that you do have textbooks to follow, but they're heavily conversational. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
expect you to really teach grammar explicitly very much. It's just like sit down and just like have a conversation about some topic. And it's a good way to get to know a lot of different people in Japan, and a good way to get to know just like different opinions and perspectives among people in Japan. Because in a normal job, you don't like interact with a wide variety of people, so you don't really know how many differing opinions there are. Like people have this image of people being all like straight laced, like follow the rules, don't act up. But then you have someone who's like a really loud, jokey class clown kind of person in your class, and you can see there's definitely very many different types of people in Japan.
Yeah, yeah. And well, we did do a little bit of we did do an episode where you talked about your time in Eikaiwa and all that, and I remember you mentioning, you really did work with a wide range of people, like a much older, I think it was a
Yeah,
former dentist, right? But and I'm sure
yeah.
like a lot of young people, and
My
just
oldest I think was 86, and the
yeah.
youngest was 9 months.
Yeah, that's okay. That's pretty
And
much cradle to grave.
that was rare. So
Yeah,
basically, the mother of the child had like lived a long time in Australia, so she spoke English like super good.
yeah.
But she wanted to like raise her child bilingual, but her husband didn't speak English.
Hmm.
So we didn't even have a baby program. She just like came in and asked if they could make one as like a private lesson.
Yeah,
And even the manager warned them like at 9 months they're not going to be speaking because that's too young. They don't even speak Japanese yet. But
yeah.
like, yeah, it's probably better than not interacting with a native at all.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. But
It
anyway,
was an
that's
awkward class because it heavily depended on how moody the child was. When she was in a when she was in a good mood, we could like dance around and play with puppets and stuff. And I mean, she would repeat after me like a 9-year-old can. Like, can you say bunny? Like, yeah. Like, oh, very good. But sometimes she's just like not in a good mood, and she just like grabs her mom and falls asleep. So then I just like talked with her mom about Australia for 30 minutes.
well, but there you go. I mean, that you don't get that range of variety in Jet.
Yeah.
That's and of course, even within these Eikaiwa schools, there might be some that are more strict and more salesy and more loose. So there's really a wide variety even within these schools. Like you said, some more shady, some proper places, et cetera, et cetera. But these are Ryan's experiences, and I think it's fair to say that you do get more of a variety on the whole, right?
Yeah.
Especially like if you're after school, you might get people that are after work, right? Or if you're during the day, you might get housewives. I assume that that's more common, and so depending on what time of the day and all that, the demographics that you're dealing with may be totally different.
Yeah. So the weekday schedule we started I think 11 or 12, and the like early afternoon was usually retired people or housewives.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually the most fun classes because they kind of didn't care about like TOEIC or anything. They just literally want to talk to you about stuff.
Yeah.
So some classes we just like bring in a newspaper. Sometimes it would be a private lesson. They're just like, I'm going to tell you about my cat.
Sure.
Well, because like depending on their English level, if they're kind of low, they like look up words because they want to like tell you a story.
Of course.
And they like did prep beforehand. You just kind of listen and like say, "Oh, that's cool," and like gives them some feedback and whatever. It was very fun. The classes are also very small.
Uh-huh.
The biggest I ever had was like 6 people.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so you get to really get to know them quite well.
Yeah, yeah.
After school is when we had a lot of the like junior high. We did have elementary kids too, but they usually came on the Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
I hated those classes, I'm going to be honest.
That's fine. I want to get your opinions. That's fine. Yeah.
They were just, some kids were fantastic. Some kids behaved horribly, like literally throwing chairs at other kids.
Wow.
And when you're just like kind of locked in a room with them, like, what do you do? Like, you're not allowed to touch the kids. So you can't
you can't even you can't discipline them in any real way. Like even in school, like there's borderline, like how can I put it? There's limits, but in an Eikaiwa, there's even more limits. So it's like, you just got to stand there, right?
Because like, you want to be like, okay, you're bad, like leave the class. But then the mom complains, like, I'm playing for this class and you kicked him out.
Exactly.
he's punching the other kids and throwing chairs. So you just
Yeah.
kind of follow them around and take anything out of their hands they pick up.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. All right.
Yeah, one
Well,
kid was a freaking nightmare.
okay. Well, that's
Most of them were
that's
pretty
totally
fine, but yeah,
possible.
one kid was a nightmare.
Yeah. That's the thing with kids, right? They're not there because they want to be there, right? Like the
Yeah,
housewives and the older people are there because they actually want to learn and they want to practice.
yeah. But
Hmm.
overall, I would say it was a very positive, fun experience, except for the whole going bankrupt and not telling us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I can badmouth them because the company doesn't even exist anymore. So what are they
Yeah.
going to
Yeah. 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 No, it's fine. You're
do?
you're just stating the facts anyway.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah.
the
Yeah. Go
ending
ahead.
is kind of interesting. They declared bankruptcy in like mid-March, I think we found out,
Yeah.
and they didn't tell us until the end of April.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just didn't get Japan pays monthly. So we just didn't get 2 months of pay.
Uh-huh.
And when this happened, everyone was like, "Oh, something suddenly happened," and they just didn't know. And then we found out they actually like applied for bankruptcy a month and a half earlier. Like, wait, they did know, and they just chose to not tell us, knowing they weren't going to pay us.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
scary too, because my apartment was in their name.
Right. 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 Right.
So I will mention that there was a bigger collapse from the Nova company,
Right.
which had a similar situation where people's apartments would be in the company's name because sometimes they don't stay very long. And some people ended up like homeless or in lots of trouble. So they actually passed laws since then to protect people in that situation.
Oh, that's good. That's
So
good.
yeah, nothing actually happened to me. I did move out very quickly because I didn't know like how the situation would develop.
Hmm.
But they have made laws to protect people working for those companies so that when they disappear, you're not just like homeless and broke immediately.
Good. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. All right. So, Eikaiwa are still around. It's still an option. And I think you got a pretty rounded perspective on, kind of what to expect. But
I
so what
I
about
will
then?
add
Yeah.
in if
Yeah.
someone's listening to this for like job choice, if you're someone who like 100% wants to live in the city like Tokyo, Osaka, Eikaiwa is probably your best choice because
That's
they're
a good point.
heavily in the cities and they're in the countryside too, but like a lot less because they're for-profit companies and there's less people there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the like jet program, you do not get to choose where you go, and almost all of them are like not big urban areas. They're usually like residential, like suburban, what you'd say in America, but Japan doesn't have that idea, or countryside.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. And that is something to consider if, you really, really, really want to go to Tokyo, for example. That's tricky with jet. Like, you might get somewhere within like a 1 to 2 hour train ride at best, but the
Yeah,
odds that you'll be in like proper Tokyo are very, very slim. So, if
there are
that's the case,
schools in like Shinjuku and Shibuya, but like
mhm,
you have like a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting one of those.
exactly, yeah, and there's plenty of people that put that on their preferred list, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's very competitive in that sense. But then, okay, so then, what about jet? Like, I did 3 years of jet in 2010 to 2013. And how long did you end up doing jet, Ryan?
Basically exactly 6 years.
Hmm.
I was an early arrival, so I quit early because so Japan has their own hiring season, which usually starts in April, but the JET program starts in August, so it's kind of like mismatches. So almost everyone who comes in the JET program but then finds like a Japanese job has to break contract the last year.
Yeah,
However, because I was an early arrival, I actually started in April.
perfect.
So well, no, because they still extended my contract to end in August, so I still like went
Oh,
4 months early.
okay,
So it
gotcha.
would have been a 6 year, 4 month contract, but then it just ended up being 6 years.
Okay,
Normally 5 is the max, in case people are curious about that. But I was here during Corona, and because they could not bring new teachers in, they extended the maximum. I think I knew a couple people who did 7 years. I don't know if anyone actually got on an 8 year contract, but I believe that is now finished, so it's back to the 5 year limit.
hmm,
Yeah, I did it for 6 years in
okay.
Ishikawa, Japan, which is very suburban-ish. I think it was like 120,000 people city.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we have talked about, Jet in general and stuff, but like, well, I'll just throw out my 2 cents. I can't compare it from personal experience to like Eikaiwa or teaching at a university in Japan, but I did 3 years overall. I'm glad that I did it. Yes, there were annoying parts, and working in a junior high that didn't quite know how to utilize me and all that. That had its frustrations, but I think it was a very enlightening experience getting to see school life, also getting to work at an elementary school, a school for the blind, just a variety of environments, and I got to spend 3 years in Kobe. I was very fortunate in that I got to stay in a city rather than a very rural area. So and I wanted to be, that was one of my requests, so I got it, and that was perfect. And I did learn a lot just about school life and all that, but also I got to keep improving my Japanese, and I'm very I'm very content with it. But by the time that I got to the 3 years, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to move on. What do I want to do? I wasn't too sure, and eventually I decided, okay, I want to try to get a master's degree in Japanese language, linguistics, blah blah blah, and that's where I ended up meeting Ryan, came to Hawaii, and all that. So like for me, like Jet had its beginning and end, and I was ready to move on to the next thing, and but I'm very glad that I did it. So the pay at the time was actually quite good. I was in the previous system where it started at what is it, 300,000 yen, and it just stayed the whole way. But now the system has changed,
Okay.
so the beginning, at the first year it's cheaper, and then it moves up a little bit. I think on the third year it ends up around that, like maybe at the 300,000.
So, unfortunately, I don't know what's changed the very last year, but during my 6 years, it's gotten worse.
Oh wow.
Uh, when I started, it started at 20 or 280,000, I guess.
Yeah.
But it did go up.
Yeah.
The first year, I think the first 2 years, it goes up like the most, and you end
Yeah.
up at like it's like plus 10,000. I don't know. You end up at like 300,000,
Yeah.
and then it goes up a little bit more. It's like a very small amount, like 5,000 yen or something after that.
Hmm.
But it does go up. But I heard people hired after me, it was like even more reduced. I don't know the exact numbers because I didn't have their contract, but I heard from like jet leaders that like it had become not as good. And
Yeah.
even for my generation, they were cutting back extra things. Like we had like a housing allowance,
Right.
and it varied depending on where you live because certain areas are more expensive, and it didn't go away. I think it never went to zero, but it like got cut in half.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they sent the worst worded letter ever to us. It
Oh.
literally said, "Laws have changed, so we are no longer required to pay you this much, so we won't." It's just like, wow, really showing you care about me. We're no
Yeah.
longer legally required to do this, so screw you.
Yeah, I don't think they realized probably the nuance there. They just, yeah, but
They
yeah,
also
yeah.
changed how our paid vacation works,
Oh,
but
okay. How's that changed?
no one knows. Everyone I
Okay.
talked to had a different story, and
Yeah.
I kind of just went with the old system, and nobody ever complained, so I ignored
Gotcha.
it. So what I had heard, some people said you were having reduced days. So this isn't like your. So every year you get like 20 Nenkyu days,
Yeah.
which are personal days you can observe. As far as I'm aware, that didn't change. But they used to give you what they call bunka kyuka, which is the cultural furlough in English, and you would get it for every one of the school vacations, and it was 5 days. So you'd have 5 days in the summer, 5 days in the winter, and 5 days at spring. So we had a brief interruption, but to continue the story,
Yeah.
the cultural furlough had some change. The memo they sent us was so poorly worded, nobody really understood it.
Hmm.
Some people thought it was saying that you only get 5 days the whole year instead of 5 days per vacation. Some
Yeah.
people thought you still did, but you could no longer choose the days, like they were set by your school. I don't know exactly. I talked with my principal about it, and he was also like, I don't know, we'll just do what we always did. So, yeah, so it didn't really affect me, but it might affect you if you come now.
Yeah. 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 And see, even that, like, I don't remember ever being told that in my time in Kobe. They didn't,
I
as far
think
as I
it
remember.
does. I think it varies by prefecture. So this is
Right.
specifically like the Ishikawa Board of Education thing.
That's it. That's exactly it. Because when I was in Kobe, they didn't give us extra days off for the. Well, I think in the summer we got like maybe 5 days off, but not for anything else. And otherwise, if you didn't want to use your normal days off, like the Nenkyu as they call them, you just had to go, even though there was absolutely nothing to do during the summer. And
Yeah,
I spent a lot of
that
boring days at the school, but yeah,
that's
it
probably
can
my
vary.
most like strong memory is I liked teaching. I was a high school, not a junior high, though I did work at a junior high at another school that was a
Hmm.
private company that competed with Jet, basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, teaching high school lessons was nice. As you said, you get to experience a part of Japan that's hard to do for a foreigner.
Hmm.
Like I've like participated in bunkasai school festivals like personally many times, which is
Yeah.
rare for someone not from Japan.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, my main memory is I had a lot of free time at that job.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're expected to go there every day, but Japan just has a mess load of school activities where they just cancel your classes.
Yeah.
And some of them you can participate in if it's like a friendly open one, but some of them you can't if it's like tests or some kind of ceremony. You can, I mean, you could go like watch it or something, but
Yeah.
half the teachers also just kind of like hang out in the office on those days.
Yeah.
And even then, in the eyes of the teachers, usually your lesson's not seen as important, or at least as
Yeah.
important for theirs. So, especially before exams, if one of the other teachers is like behind on the curriculum, they'll cancel your class, like, oh, I have to help them catch up. And then the other teachers will hear that that teacher canceled it. They're like, oh, well, we want to have everyone have the same number of classes, so we're going to cancel you too.
Right.
So yeah, often when finals came up, I just had like 2 or 3 weeks of free time. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
free time. I would like prepare my final and stuff, but they didn't actually take it yet, so I can't even like use the time to grade. So I'm just kind of like sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. I found, yeah, I mean, I did use the time to prepare stuff, but
Yeah, yeah,
there was only so much you could prepare sometimes. And oftentimes, especially once you're in the second and third year, you already have a lot of that stuff done.
yeah. Once your
So
lessons are made, and you don't want to get like 4 months ahead of time because those
yeah.
classes might get canceled anyway.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I certainly had my fair share of, days where they were like taking tests and I had nothing to do. So I would be studying Japanese or I don't know, finding something to do, walking around the school or something.
I did that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It is what it is. And if you really, really hate that, that may not be for you. But again, I think it's a great experience 1 year, and then it's really up to you if you want to keep going with that or not. It's how much are you benefiting from that career wise. It really depends on what you plan to do long term. I think many people do like to just do it 1 year, they experience it, and they go on and move on with their lives, and that's totally fine. That the program does allow that. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why they cut the pay, because they know so many people just come 1 year. It's like we can save so much money because most people just leave after 1 year or 2 years. So it is what it is. But overall, I'm glad I did it. But you got to keep in mind, the pay has gone down, and there's no guarantee that it'll be perfect. So I've heard horror stories. It really does depend, person to person, situation to situation, school to school.
I believe even so, the pay has reduced. It's only gone down a little bit, though. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, only like cutting like bonus things,
Mm-hmm.
and prices have gone up. I still think it's a very livable wage.
It is. It
If
is. Yeah.
you're, yeah, some of the Eikaiwa, what I hear they're paying now, I think would be very difficult without doing some kind of side job.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, even back when I was looking around at jobs like that was like Niju so like what is that?
yeah,
200,000 yen, which is you're getting into territory where like yeah, that starts to get a little
honestly,
tougher.
okay, so you haven't been here since like the yen crash. Prices,
Yeah,
domestic prices are starting to rise. I do not think Nijimon is like survivable anymore,
yeah, yeah.
even if
It's
you're really
tough.
really tight.
And especially, let's say you're a student that has loans and things that you're going to have to be paying back, and you have to
Yeah,
exchange it back into dollars. Whoo, you're not going to be having a good time if that's the case. You definitely would want to try to find something you're doing on the side, or private teaching. That can be,
yeah,
like you said, like the kate kyoshi, like the home tutoring. That can be actually quite
yeah,
lucrative
yeah.
if you find the right people. They'll pay you like easily 5,000 yen an hour or something like that in many situations.
Yeah, even more. I had
Mm-hmm.
one. I got a doctor, a psychologist, who wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
it for him and his wife. I guess because it was two of them, they gave me 10,000 an hour.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. I did it with Spanish, and it was nice. It was nice to just get an extra 5,000 yen every week. And again, this was a while ago, so that was when basically the yen and the dollar were like pretty much the same, like 100 yen to a dollar.
Mm.
So it was great. It was great. I was exchanging that into dollars, and it was excellent.
Oh, I
So
miss those.
oh, I'm sure you do. So, yeah, you got to keep that in mind, right? But sometimes you got to do something that's not great to get your foot in the door if you really, really want to go to Japan. But,
I guess that
anyway,
is something we should mention too. Like, if your dream is to move and live in Japan, then like by all means do it. When Tony and I were younger, like out of undergrad, I think Jet was a fairly good job with its pay for like straight out of college
absolutely.
and the
For
experience of
straight
living
out of
abroad.
college, yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
but the yen has crashed pretty hard, and
Yep.
if you're planning, like before, you could come here, do a year or two, save up money, go back to America, and be like kind of well off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think comparable to other jobs you could find in your home country, Japan is probably paying much lower.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely, yeah, especially unless you find like something really, really good, blah, blah, blah. There's exceptions here and there. Or you let's say you're running like an online business, but you're teaching English in Japan and you just want to be there, like
Yeah.
there's ways to make that work. But for most people, yeah, like earning 200,000 yen a month is going to be really, really a tight budget, on the from month to month. But
The
anyway,
prices in Japan are much lower than America. Like
yeah,
the yen price going down doesn't mean that like overnight all of our prices of things just like double. They kind of
exactly.
stay the same. So if you're paid in yen living in Japan, Jet absolutely is livable, kind of comfortably livable. I
Yeah,
guess I have kind of a cheap lifestyle. If you're someone who wants to like go traveling every weekend and drinking a lot, you might have some trouble. But
yeah.
normal lifestyle, you'll probably be fine. But yeah, mostly if you're thinking to like save up money and bring it back to the US, the value has gone down a lot. So it would not be as much as it once would have been.
Yeah, yeah. So of course that, what you need to pay your bills and all that depends on a person to person. So that's, up to you guys. But let's then get into the university. So it's been one school year that you've been at a
Yes.
university now. You've been working there. Tell us what you think, how it's been, what you like, if there's anything, maybe that you preferred from other jobs, or, just give us a general perspective.
This is easily the best job I've ever had in my life.
Wonderful.
Like
And let's bye guys, we're done.
yeah. So I've only worked at this one university. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I've heard it's fairly normal compared to
Yeah.
other schools, but I don't know for certain. So the main difference is, okay, as a JET, you are an assistant language teacher.
Yeah.
Were you actually used as an assistant, Tony? Like, how much control did you have when you did it?
So it really depends on the school. So at the junior high, I had minimal to no control. At the elementary school, it would depend on the day. Some days, I basically did everything. Other days, it was, once they started to get the textbooks in, it was more like, got to do exactly the textbook thing. So it's, yeah, so. And then, but at the School for the Blind, I did get a lot of leeway in my, lessons and all that. So it does depend. I know of some situations, some teachers that they were assistants, but they weren't working like assistants. They were basically like running a class of their own. So it can really vary, but the kind of stereotypical case that you hear about is a person that's like the tape recorder, not doing much. They're kind of just standing off to the side of the classroom, and they may get a lesson here or there that's basically like playing a bunch of games. And if that's for you, that's great, but for some people that can be very frustrating.
I will say, I think the tape recorder days might be like old now. I don't think that really happens so much. As someone who's been here since 2008, I've seen the curriculum change
Right.
and in like influx of younger teachers who actually can speak English.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, when I first came here, the younger teachers were always usually good, but usually like the English head, for again, we're going back to Jet, would be like someone in their 50s or 60s whose English was like very questionable, but they were in charge, so they just had to do what they said, and it wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing Jet, so when I started Jet in Ishikawa, that started in 2017, so like much later, 9 years later, much better system. I forgot where I'm going.
That the new
Oh yeah,
teachers are better at English, it seems.
yeah. The reason I asked how much control you had, my situation was a little bit unique
Hmm.
because I came here after graduate school,
Yeah,
and even at my interview, the guy said like, to be honest, you're overqualified. Why do you want this job?
yeah.
And I was like, well, I liked teaching. Like at the time, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Like even now, I'm a teacher. My long-term goal is teacher. So I said, honest answer, like I want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher in Japan, and this is just like a good way to like get a visa, get into the country, and start doing it. So they did hire me, but going to my school, they were aware that I was not a new teacher. I already had like 6 years teaching between teaching in Hawaii and teaching in Japan, and I had a
Hmm.
master's degree.
Yeah.
So my experience and education was higher than some of the English teachers I was working with, some of the English teachers that I was assisting,
Sure.
air quotes.
Yeah.
So they kind of just gave me full control.
That's cool.
Like not full control, but I was treated very much like a normal teacher. Like I
Hmm.
still had to cover the like government set curriculum.
Hmm.
Even some of the teachers said I could completely ignore it. Depending on the teacher, some of them said like, please like do what grammar's in the textbook, but you can do it whatever way you want. Like if we have a textbook talking about, I don't know, like food, I could completely ignore that and make a lesson about shopping or whatever I wanted, as long as it was the same grammar.
Hmm.
And some teachers were just like, I'll cover the grammar in my grammar section, because there's always a grammar section and a conversation section.
Hmm.
So they would say like, just teach whatever you think will help and whatever you think is important. Like we trust you. Legally, I think you're not allowed to be alone in the classroom unless you have a license.
I think so. Yeah.
So they'd always come with me, but some of them would like actively like participate with me, and they'd work as my assistant, where like I'm the one teaching, and
Hmm.
like I'd hand them a stack of papers, like, oh, can you hand this out, or can you help that girl? She has her hand up, kind of thing. Some of them would just like sit in the back and grade papers, and like
Yeah.
100% I'm in control doing everything. And as someone who wanted to be a teacher and was interested in teaching, this was good for me. I didn't want to be the like record player guy or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So going to university, because I was already accustomed to being like the lead teacher, I'm the only teacher now. There is no other teacher there.
Hmm.
It's just me. So that was not really a change. But I don't have my assistant, which sometimes would be nice to still have someone else in there just to help you out with stuff.
Hmm.
It's very similar where we have a curriculum we have to cover, but we can cover it however we want to. So
Hmm.
we do have a textbook, and we tell the students it's mandatory, but like we can ignore it if we want.
Hmm.
It's useful to have to give them like homework assignments out of it though, because it's better than trying to like make your own stuff for absolutely everything.
Hmm.
Um, so the teaching part I think is almost the same, except that now I'm alone and I have to do everything, including like grade entry and stuff, which you didn't really have to do much in Jet.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I did, but like there's like I said, there's always like a head teacher, so you would just like give your grades to them, and then they would actually handle like the official entry into the system.
Sure.
Where now that is also my job to do that, which isn't a
Hmm.
big deal, but I guess if you make mistakes, it can become a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, as as with regards to the having loads of free time in Jet, like I said, you had to go every day, but a lot of the days you didn't actually have anything to do. Some days you were very busy, but some days you just literally sit at your desk for 7 hours, like browsing the internet.
Hmm.
The university I teach every day I go, so I'm busy. If I go to campus, I am busy, but we don't have to go to campus if we don't have classes.
Right.
So my current schedule, my Monday ends at like 12:30, and I could just go home,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is fantastic.
Right.
And we're in charge of 12 classes, 12 coma they call them, and they're 90 minutes each. So the classes are kind of long, and they're spread throughout the whole week. But the guy in charge is very nice, and he kind of tries to give everyone a preparation day,
Hmm.
which is useful to have a day where you can prepare stuff, grade stuff, and like get tests and whatever ready. But that's always a day where there's no classes. So some people still show up to work and like just sit in the office and do whatever they have to do. But we're allowed to just stay home that day if we want to and work on
Nice.
whatever we have at home. So having that kind of freedom is really nice.
Hmm.
Just after having 6 years of sometimes 2 weeks in a row, you just show up and literally do nothing.
Exactly.
Having
Yeah.
a school that's like, well, if you don't have anything to do, just stay home. It's fine. Like, oh, thanks. That's so awesome.
Yeah. That's great.
Um, there is like an other side though. So like I said, in the JET program, you get the Bunka Kyuka, the cultural furlough for all the breaks, and you get 20 days of like personal days.
Hmm.
We don't get any days.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, obviously, if you're sick or there's an emergency, you can cancel classes. We have like a way of doing that,
Hmm.
but we don't really have like there's no like substitute teacher. You can't just be like, oh, I want to go to a concert this Wednesday. Someone cover my class. Like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
However, the bonus is when we have winter break and summer break, we don't go to class for like 2 months with full pay.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's. I mean, you don't really need extra vacation if that's the case.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of their thinking too. Is like
Yeah.
you get months off for summer and winter, like plan all your trips and whatever then, but then like actually be here when it's the semester time.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's
And
great.
I'm currently on winter break and or not winter break, spring break right now. I don't know when this goes up, but it's like early
Yeah.
March right now. And I had to go in for a meeting about 3 weeks ago. And I think my first day of class will be like April 8th or something. And until then, I'm just free.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. And everyone always asks, like, oh, and they still pay you?
Yeah.
Yes. My contract is that I have to handle 24 classes, 24 coma per year. As
Yeah.
long as I do that, like what time I go, what time I don't go, like it doesn't matter. Like my contract is just handle these classes.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Huh. And is was having a master's degree a requirement for the position?
Yeah. So advice if you want to go to university, they tend to ask for higher things than you actually need.
Hmm.
Recently, the standards have gone even higher where a lot of positions say PhD required, which if you're a professor, I understand, but when you're like, I'm basically like a lecturer. I'm not like a tenured professor or anything. So requiring a PhD for that is like kind of crazy,
Hmm.
but apply anyway because you don't actually need it.
Yeah.
So mine does say master's required. And I know for a fact one person was hired who was like in progress of their master's. So they didn't actually have it yet. So I don't know if you can do it with like no master's and no plan to ever get a master's. But if you're in a situation where it's like incomplete and you're currently working on it, or like, especially if you need to do like research and you want to use your time at the school to do research for your thesis for your master's, you definitely still can apply and possibly get the job.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if that's something that, let's say you're going to JET and you are serious, this is like you already know what you want to do. Working on your master's while you're on JET seems like a pretty good option because you got that time to do that.
I wanted to say like Jet can be very enjoyable if you're good of making use of the free time.
Yeah,
So like you, I would spend a lot of time like studying Japanese and reading Japanese, and so I
yeah,
got my level fairly good during that time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did a lot of those JLPT books and stuff. I was reading through those.
Even
Uh,
I don't know if I
mhm.
should admit this, but like I made like D&D campaigns and stuff too, just sitting there.
It's okay.
They're understandable. Like
Yeah,
they know you don't have anything to do, so they're
yeah,
not like as long as you're not like actively playing a video game. I don't think they care. People bring in
yeah.
books. I've seen people read manga. Like it's usually fine.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's like you got nothing to do. I think they're most of the I don't know, Kocho sensei, whatever, the principals, they're probably they understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But all right, so and just for the sake of clarity, you do teach English, right? Like you're still
Yes, yes.
teaching
It's
English.
all been
Okay.
English. I am still an English teacher here. At my school now, it's also divided. We have half of the. Okay, so I'm in the general education department.
Hmm.
So the general education department is what I mean. It's general education. Everyone takes it. So my students are not English majors. The English majors take like a different English course. It's like more specialized and more in depth,
Hmm.
which means my students level tends to be lower.
Right.
But it's also divided in half where there's the TOEIC training. TOEIC, if you haven't worked in Japanese education, is like the most important test for English ability that you need even just for like a job that doesn't use English. Like everyone asks you for your TOEIC.
Hmm.
So that is the more grammar oriented course, and mine is still like the conversational oriented course.
Hmm.
We still cover grammar and stuff too, but I think our class is generally more fun for the teacher and for the student than the TOEIC classes.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Did they help you in any way with because I know you had to move from Ishikawa to Kyoto. Did they help you in any way with the housing situation, like even just searching for it, or was that something you completely had to do
No.
yourself?
So yeah, Jet does give you like someone assigned to you who will help you find an apartment, set up your bank account, and get a phone, and it really helps
Hmm.
you when you're coming in.
Yeah.
The university didn't.
Right.
I think, so. You can apply from abroad, but like at the interview, like I clearly live in Japan and they know that. So
Oh,
I think
okay.
that they sort of assume you're capable of handling that.
Sure, sure.
They're still friendly people. Like if you ask for
Mhm.
advice, like, oh, where's like a cheap area, I'm sure they'll tell you.
Yeah,
But they're
yeah.
not gonna like hold your hand and go to the real estate agents and like help you find a house or anything.
Right, right. I assume that in some situations, if they're hiring you from abroad, they may provide more assistance.
They may, yeah. I
May,
don't
but
know because
I
I wasn't
don't
coming, but
exactly. Yeah.
I would be surprised if they didn't because it's very hard to apartment hunt from outside the country.
And especially, yeah, well, there's that. If you're not even there, yeah, that there's that. And then on top of that, even if you're in the country and you don't speak the language, it's very tricky. So I would assume that most situations like that, they provide some assistance. Yeah.
I will say, when I came for the interview, I was still living in Ishikawa, so it's like a 3-hour train in like I don't know, like 7,000 yen,
Hmm.
and they actually paid for my train fare to go to the interview.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's another thing. That's not special with teaching, but just in Japan, all companies pay your travel expenses always. It's just expected.
Yeah. 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 交通費, that's pretty
Yeah.
common. Yeah. 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 But I mean, 7,000 yen, that's pretty good.
One way,
Okay.
so it was actually double that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's pretty good. Of course, no need to say exactly how you earn, no, of course, but like you already said, you make more, and it seems that you're happy with the amount that you're making, especially compared to Jet and
It
Eikaiwa and all that.
So again, in the yen in Japan,
Right.
it's fairly comfortable living for
Hmm.
my situation, which is just me and my wife.
Hmm.
She works a part-time job, so she does provide some extra income, but not a huge. Mostly, it's like 90% my checks supporting us.
Hmm.
I will say, if you have like a family, like wife and 2 kids, and you're the only one working, I think you could still do it, but I think it would become very tight.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And what about like so you said you're on a contract, so if you get renewed and you stay, is there that opportunity to keep moving up in some way to get pay raises or anything like that?
So the pay is standard for all of us,
Hmm.
regardless of the years.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that's normal or if that's just how the union did it, because we do have a teachers union.
Okay.
We're actually giving a raise starting next month because of the teachers union. Go teachers union.
Nice.
Not a huge one, but hey,
Hmm.
it's always nice to get
Hey,
something.
exactly.
Yeah, all the teachers, regardless of seniority, get the same pay. And the first contract is for 4 years, and then you can renew it twice for 3 years each. So it's a maximum of 10 years.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know why all Japanese companies insist on having contract maximums for foreigners, but they pretty much all do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have no idea.
But talking with the older teachers, they've told me once you get into the university system and you have experience, when you reach that limit, it's fairly easy to just get another university job and then you work there for their 10 years. And then after that, you can even come back to the same school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they said they
Gotcha.
basically pick an area they like and just kind of like bounce around between schools until they retire.
Okay. Okay, good to know that. Um, all right. And then I don't know, anything else you want to mention?
Uh,
Yeah.
in addition to like liking the job and liking the school and liking the conditions, I have to show it to you next time you visit.
Yeah.
My school is freaking beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Like it's in the mountains and it's like
Hmm.
overlooking the whole city of Kyoto,
Hmm.
and it's surrounded by sakura.
Oh,
And
wow.
any season you're there, whether it's spring, winter, fall, like it is like breathtakingly beautiful.
Hmm.
So last year some friends came to visit in the summer, and I forgot where we went, like Inari Taisha or whatever, something like that.
Hmm.
And I remember they're like, "Oh, it's so beautiful." I'm looking around like, I think my school is actually more beautiful. I think it really is.
Yeah. That's great. Hey, that's a nice bonus.
The
So
only downside is we are literally on the side of a mountain, so the whole
yeah.
campus is kind of split into like 3 levels with like giant escalators connecting them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, each escalator seriously goes like 5 floors.
Wow.
So there's only one. I guess sometimes there's 2 escalators. Depending on the path you take, you might have to take stairs. I usually try to avoid that, but if you have to go up 10 flights of stairs to go up the mountainside to get to your class, it can be kind of tiring.
Yeah. That's an interesting architecture, but yeah, it sounds like very unique, very nice.
We even
Uh,
have a little lake.
wow.
Yeah, it's a shockingly beautiful school.
Wow. Huh. I mean, it sounds. I would assume it's also relatively new. Uh,
It was first established in like the 50s,
okay. All right.
but
Yeah. Post-war. All right.
like most universities, they just like continually renewed or rebuilt things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the building I mostly teach in, I think was finished in like 2019 because it has like the year on like the walls and desks and stuff.
Gotcha.
My office is currently under a renovation. It's supposed to finish, I think maybe this semester.
Hmm.
So the building's not brand new, but it pretty much looks brand
Yeah. It's
new.
quite new. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I mean, obviously, you already told us the answer at the beginning, but just to confirm, so what's better? Of course, it depends on the situation. If you need a visa, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes you can't get your ideal situation, all that. But given your personal experience, you've had Eikaiwa, Jet, and university. It seems you're the most happy where you are now with the university position.
The university is definitely the best, but Jet is not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I fully enjoyed my time there. I think if they didn't have the limit, I would have stayed even longer.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the teachers I worked with. I liked the school. I liked the student. Especially the longer you're there, I think like the more connection you make with the student and the school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it becomes more enjoyable like as you go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're someone who's like trying to get the university and you can't, so you have to like settle for Jet, like Jet is great. You're
Yeah.
not going to be unhappy at all.
Yeah, yeah, and again, we said this already, but make the most out of that free time. Odds are you
Yes,
will have
yes.
free time. So if you are thinking you want to stay there long term, maybe get that master's, or
Yes.
maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not even teaching that you want to do long term. You can start something else while you're doing Jet. Something on the side. Maybe you're not supposed to work on the side, I think, on Jet, but yeah, I don't know. You can figure something out with that extra time. So
Oh,
make the most of that.
since you mentioned that, yeah, Jet does have a rule that you're not supposed to work on things on the side.
Yeah.
I did have one person who was a friend who used their free time to write a book that they had to do secretly because technically that's work.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But the university explicitly told us we are allowed to have second jobs. Actually,
Wow. Okay. I mean, well, if that's the case, if you're good at time management and you can, you do have that flexibility with your time when you're not in class and all that, in theory, you could make a decent amount of money. It seems, especially
yeah.
if you can get some private tutoring classes on when those days off and all that. Like,
Yeah, like I said, they try to give us all one day of like prep day off, and a lot
mhm.
of people work part time in a different university and do like 3 or 4 classes that day to make it even higher.
Nice,
I,
nice,
I'm
nice.
I'm one of the people that like as long as I can live, I'm happy. I want time more than money, so I don't ever plan to do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, if
Yeah.
you're that more work motivated person, you absolutely can do that. We are also allowed to conduct research.
Hmm.
So if you're someone who's more into education and you want to like develop a new teaching style or test, and you actually want, you do have to get permission, of course, like through the different boards and through the college and whatever to approve it. But you can do research projects at the school, at least at mine. I think it's normal though.
Hmm. Okay. Well, no, that's great. I'm glad. When I came up with the idea for this episode, I forgot that you did Eikaiwa, so it was great that actually you did have the experience. Yeah. Even though we did like a couple episodes where we talked about that before, but I'm glad you were able to bring in that perspective as well. So it ultimately depends on each person's priorities and what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes you can't get the perfect situation from the get go, but you can, if you really really want to get to Japan, there are options there, and you can work your way to that ideal situation eventually. So, but just.
And I will also note that I like university the most because I like linguistics. We met in a linguistics class, so
Yeah.
I feel older students in a university setting, I can kind of dig deeper into actually giving grammatical explanations. A lot of the teachers are afraid of that. Like if someone
Yeah.
asks you, like, why do you go to the store but you go home, not to home?
Mm-hmm.
And they freak out. Like I like questions like that. I get excited and want to explain. By the way, it's because it's an adverb. Um,
Yeah.
but different people like different things. I had a friend who absolutely loved working with like elementary school students.
Yeah.
And JET can also go to elementary school. It does elementary through high school. So if like high level grammatical linguistic teaching sounds scary to you, JET might be the better option because honestly, elementary school and even half of junior high, you're kind of just paid to play with kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, there are other situations too where like there's plenty of people that end up going completely independent, or
Yeah,
I don't know, like end up working at a private school like that's
yeah.
owned by perhaps, even like there's plenty of non-Japanese people running, their own English schools and maybe end
Yes,
up
yes,
working there.
yes.
So, there's options out there, but these are kind of the three most common ones that people, either use to get in the door, or somehow rotate between these three. So just wanted to
Yeah, and
cover the basic steps there.
I know university seems like the people who like teaching and want to stay in Japan. It seems like the normal goal people have. But
Mm-hmm.
again, if the younger audience, you can go for like a private elementary school,
Absolutely. Yeah.
or even so. There's prefectural schools and city schools. The prefectural ones are pretty strict and hard to get into without having like a Japanese teacher license.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a friend who worked JET, I believe at a junior high, through like in the city system. And when his contract with JET ended, the city just hired him directly, and he just continued
Right.
to work there.
Yeah, I've heard of situations like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, if you're someone who doesn't want to do teaching adults in that kind of like more reserved academic setting, and you're more into like the younger fun stuff, you absolutely can use JET as a foot in the door to pursue that too. You could go become like a kindergarten teacher somewhere. There's international schools that want people to like do fully English. One of my friends who actually was just on JET recently got hired at an international school as a science teacher.
Yeah.
So he teaches like biology in English to Japanese high school students.
Yeah. I would say probably most cities have a school like that. I remember Kobe had, I think it was called the Canadian Academy. I think that's it.
Only Canadians welcome?
Yeah, well, not as far as I could tell, but I guess it originated in Canada.
Yeah.
But no, that's also a great option. Of course, it could be competitive, I would assume, but you're basically teaching. You can, in theory, teach other subjects in English as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so JET is still useful because you get that teaching experience. That's usually, I mean, obviously the first hurdle is getting a visa.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, almost everything wants you to have experience in Japan specifically. Having experience abroad isn't worthless, but they tend to feel more comfortable if you're used to like the Japanese system. Mm-hmm. So JET can let you do that to go on to whatever other thing you want. And of course, lots of people just do JET to get a visa and then go work at like some tech thing in Tokyo too.
Yeah. And that's, you do your year and then you move on to the thing that you want to do. And that's totally fine. You just, you got to start searching for that job partway through the JET thing and making sure that it all lines up. Hopefully you don't leave early. You finish your contract and then you move on to the next thing. But yeah, that's basically it. I thank you, Ryan, for sharing your perspectives. Like I said, I've only done JET, so I can't talk from personal experience about all that stuff, but great to get your thoughts on that. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel as well. Working my way up to that 1,000 subscriber mark. It is increasing slowly.
999 more to go.
Well, it took me a while to get to that number one. No,
it took 4 years to get.
Yeah,
for your mom to finally click subscribe.
Yeah, my mom did it. She said, "Fine, stop bugging me." No, we're in the 600s as of probably, I don't know, unless it shoots up all of a sudden before this episode comes out. But as of like March 3rd, whatever it is today, March 4th, it's like 600 something. So we're making our way up there little by little. So if you can hit that subscribe button to YouTube, help us get up there. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you want to drop a review, in the Ichimon Japan, Apple Podcast, whatever, I'll have Ryan read it to us if I get any more. So. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time.
See you next time.